Hello and welcome everyone to this online Pecha Kucha. If you haven't, or Pecha Kucha, I'm mispronouncing it. There is a proper pronunciation. So MakeHaven decided to pull this together really to show off what some makers were doing, like a show and tell, to share some ideas across the community and hopefully inspire some activities and some actions. I expect the formal presentations to take about an hour, and then we'll have some, we'll see how it goes, but we'll have some time to chat. You can ask some questions in the chat, and feel free to cue some questions or share some ideas with the rest of the community that's here while we are moving along. And if you're not familiar with this format, the presenters will be going rapid fire one after another, and they will have about 6.5 minutes to share the content of 20 slides. So without too much further ado, I think we will get ready to present the first presenter.
Well, good evening, everybody. I'm Chris LaSalle. I'm the lead mentor of the Robo Dominators, part of about a 3,000 teams that are currently competing. There's about 7,000 or 8,000 registrations that have been around for about 20 to 25 to 30 years. So I'm the lead mentor for electromechanical, and we were established in 2012 through a STEM school operation, science, technology out of University of New Haven High School. What you see here is it's very student-oriented builds for robotics competitions that are unveiled once a year. And we have about approximately 6 weeks to build these robots. So these students were part of our first year. These are actually a second-year robot, but this is part of our first-year students. And you'll see that as they go along in the season, we get a theme. We're told what the game's going to be, and we have to design our robots around the game and the theme. You'll see different objects, different objectives that are met, and we try to do that with the critical thinking of the students involved. Some of these students right now are our mentors. These are have become our mentors. This group right here was our last season that we actually played before the COVID hit. And you can see how very integrated these robots are with sensors. This is our most sensor heavy. They have inertial navigation systems, pneumatic systems, rise and lift. We actually have Java programming where the systems figure out how to lift a robot. So we use MakeHaven as our space because the schools are becoming harder and harder to occupy their space, and COVID now is wreaking havoc, as you know, with schools and space. So we held our kickoff, and we attract about 14 to 20 students a season. We also use CAD design. We actually use MakeHaven's materials, such as the MarkForge printer. We figured that we can use lighter materials because we have weight limits on how much our robots can build. So weight's critical a lot of time, and also it's a competitive advantage. So this is a block that we used to hold pneumatic systems on there. So coming to MakeHaven has been a huge advantage to us, and other teams are doing that. Like I said, we have electrical and programming, and here I am showing students how to hook up into the computer system, electronics, wiring, making sure the wiring is legal for the competition, because we get inspected heavily for safety and making sure everything is put together properly so the competition doesn't have any issues. What you see here is our first year robot, and we over-designed it, and it became very, it worked, but it was very heavy. And then 2 weeks later at another competition, we designed the robots you see toward the right, and we were fairly successful, but it was a dumb robot. We've been trying to achieve goals of creating sophisticated robots as we've gone along. Here we have a father and son team. He started when he was a freshman. This gentleman on the right, Matt, just graduated. He's a senior this year, and he's a mentor on the team, and his father's staying with the team. So we're trying to build not only just students to be able to learn how to do design theory and all that kind of stuff, but we have parents involved in bringing them as mentors. Half our mentors are from Sikorsky. I'm from Sikorsky Aircraft. And if you look at the electronics table behind that they're working, you can see that's the sophistication. We have a sensor below here that is a ultrasonic sensor. We use that to stop and let the robot know that it has captured an object, a ball. They do different competitions, frisbees and so forth. But what was good with our team, which is different from other teams, we try not to be a mentor-only team that builds robots. The kids get involved, troubleshooting, fixing. One year we had 2 females. We found that they were fantastic as far as getting team motivated to build. So we look for diversity, and we spot the people that have potential. And the year before, we had 2 captains that were male and female, and one's a programmer. So, like I said, we programmed this young gentleman on the left. He started as a freshman, was a godsend to us because he just understood Java and picked it up right away. And he's the sole reason why we got about 95% of our electronic goals and sensor goals put together. And every year we try to find better ways to do things. So if you see here, up top is the computer control system, motor control, power. It runs off 12 volts of battery, 12-volt system. It's CAN networked, just like you would see in your cars to control. Very sophisticated. And also, like I said, we have inertial navigation, optical. We're working with LiDAR now for field positioning. And if you see here on this robot, actually it was very heavy, so we see a lot of holes. We actually overbuilt it. We were about 15 pounds over, so we drilled out the holes. But you see that green light on there is a targeting camera, and it will follow you if it's follow any target. We had this thing, if you've seen it, some of you that were at the shop last winter, we had a robot following us around the shop. So again, this robot actually, we won a second place in Waterbury. They put teams together as an alliance, and your objective is who's got the strengths and weaknesses that contain the various goals, because there's a lot. It's a 3-ring circus. And then back in the pits, it's like NASCAR, and you're going from Friday till Sunday. This particular event, there was a climbing event, and our robot, we designed it to be able to climb and hit this light up here. And we got it to pick up about 90 pounds of robot in 4 seconds off the ground, about to hit the light about 4.5 feet, 5 feet off the ground. So the competition is pretty tense. It's like going to any basketball or varsity sport. Here's our robot. You can see this thing went up about 9 feet in the air to drop these cubes onto an objective. And we don't have the whole field, but you can see they have referees. They give you yellow cards, red cards for violations. Robots get pinned, and also that's not intentional, but robots do get damaged and fall apart. This is our robot from this season. We actually sitting upstairs right now, incomplete because of COVID, and graciously that First is allowing us to reset the season with some modifications. So our intent is to finish the robot and get this thing rolling in the next few weeks before the season, test, and get our drivers set up and everything. So that's my presentation. And if you have any questions, please let me know in the chat. If you see me around the shop, we dominate the MakeHaven from January to about February or March. So you can see that you'll see us around. So please stop by and say hello. If you want to be a mentor and have any skills you want to bring to the table, we have some MakeHaven mentors. Please join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are you there, Julia? Your audio.
I am ready to go if you can hear me.
All right, I'm ready to start you up.
Let's go. Hello, my name is Julia, and I am a professional sculptor. I do largely commission work, some of which is portraiture. It's, getting a likeness, doing a nice serious bust like the one you see here. However, I do other work as well. And what we're talking about today is going to be garage kits, which is an amazing and very different genre of sculpture. If you imagine a collectible figurine of your favorite character, except you put it together yourself, you build it and paint it, and then you have it on your shelf along with all the hundreds of others. That is what garage kits are. And it's a popular It's popular in the US, but nowhere is it as popular as it is in Japan. They are crazy for it. There are huge events, tons and tons of options. And I had a client from Japan contact me because he wanted to do a kit from the Sony PlayStation game Bloodborne, which is this really popular kind of like horror steampunky type of role-playing game. And he said, would you like to do this heroic character? Would you like to do a creature? And I was like, give me the zombie horse demon. That would obviously be the first choice. So I present you with Ludwig. Ludwig is one of the bosses in the game, and it's this truly insane design. That lots of stuff going on. And so I wanted to do something different. And I'm known for my dynamic sculpture, so it was going to be a motion pose. I found going into it that it was going to be a rather difficult thing to assemble information for to actually build the thing. This is called reference. It's just, photos of different things that I use to actually do the sculpture, anywhere from, you know, details on hair to the creature itself to there's a little zombie action going on there. So I had to kind of cobble it together from lots of different stuff. Now, this is the beginning of the piece is always going to be an armature with a sculpture, and it serves a couple of different functions. The first one is to create stability and a framework to build the sculpture onto, and the other is to give it enough flexibility that you can adjust the pose and make changes as you need to. Like here you see the oil clay that I started it in to get the gesture, which is in a classic serpentine composition. And then on the far right, you see the blue lines there indicate where this part is going to be cut up in order to make a mold of it and cast it into a new material, in this case wax, because the soft clay can't hold detail. So what I do is I create, using the silicone rubber you see here in pink, and a pressure casting system. I use this to make a dump mold, which is basically a single-use mold, just to transfer it into the new material. And you'll see on the right, previous projects get melted down and are made into the new pieces. So here you can actually see a shoulder joint, and I try really hard to make it easy for the painters, meaning I try to hide the joints, make it as easy to go together as possible. That's the sort of thing that gets you a good reputation as a sculptor. Like right here, I spent hours rendering all these little eyeballs in this crazy extra head that he has. And a painter actually took it and did justice to all that time I spent. So it's very gratifying, and they appreciate it as well. So another interesting part about Ludwig is he had, oh, I'm sorry, I thought the slides were going to be in a different order. Okay, this is actually a mold that you would use to create the extra parts. And here you can see that I had to transfer from wax into resin, because as another step, it has to be able to accept the weight of the piece. Okay, here's another thing about Ludwig. He lives in, I kid you not, what is called the underground corpse pile in the game. Like, that is his home. And so I had to create a base that reflected that with a ton of detail and a lot of these little bodies. And we will get back to that soon. But they had to be in scale to him because he's a large creature. So to do that, I duplicated a couple of sculpts using molds. The blue rubber you see is silicone, and that's what I use to make a firmer cast in wax. And then the white ones are actually plaster, and they're rigid, but I used those to create pressed indentation molds of a soft clay. So I had both types. So this is a tray of little bodies that I created in order to fabricate the base, and it took a really long time, but it requires a lot of attention to detail, and that's just, you know, part of the design process. In the end, I was very happy with the way it turned out, because this is the master sculpt perched on top of his little pile of people, and there are both wax and resin components, as well as the 3D printed sword. And this master is then sent to the customer to Japan, where it's used to make the production models, or the production molds. And then if you were a kit builder, you would buy it. It would come in the box like this, 18 different pieces, and you would put it together and make it your own, which is the super cool thing that I love about this hobby. It's sort of a collaboration between the painters and the sculptors. And you get these beautiful paint ups. Like here you can really see, this is a painter named Shaky Dave. You can really see how his paint job really brings the piece to life, shows the detail. And every single person who builds one is going to do it a little different. So it's very cool to see new versions of Ludwig show up as people buy their kits, put them together, and paint them. And it's a really cool hobby, because A, people appreciate sculpture, and B, they're just building things for the love of building. It's just like the pure enjoyment of creation, along with the collecting aspect of it. It's just really neat, and people are very, very cool. And as far as Ludwig goes, it is time for us to part, and he is now going back in the bin, and he'll get melted down to become my next project, whatever that may be. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone listening to my little spiel.
Great.
So on my hand, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present to you our new makerspace at Cedric. My name is Cedric, and if you hear an accent, it's because I'm from France originally, so that explains some of the weird accent you're going to hear. So I work at Sacred Art. The slide is not working, JR. Something's going on. Whoa. We got slow-mo. Nice. I work at Sacred Art, where I'm the manager there, and we've created the lab about a year ago, and I'm going to tell you what happened so far. So first, we had to, I'm not sure where the slides are, not sliding. I trained so hard for those 20-second things, and now it's being a minute. So what happened is that first we had to build this thing. It took us about a year to order, receive, install, and train for all of the equipment. And we decided to build a lot of our custom furniture for ease of use in the lab. And I really love how it was the students' first experience as being a maker. So they had to build everything, and that was quite the training. So what have we done? We have an 11,000 square foot makerspace, and I'm going to give you a quick tour. This is the studio where people can bring their hands-on activities. We also have computers now for people to work on their design. Here, this is the electronics area where, in vinyl area, we offer all the traditional equipment that you'll find in the electronics area. Plus, we have a Voltaire PCB machine that allows you to literally print electronic boards, which is pretty handy. And with the vinyl, it was a huge hit with our art students. So we're pretty excited to have those. This is a picture of our wet lab. So in there, we have microscopes, balances, stirrers, etc. What we want to do is be able to create a biolab. We hope to do that in the near future when we find the right experts. And we also have some Formlab printers and color 3D printers in that room, which is pretty cool. So this is our textile lab, and we have everything from sewing machine to heat presses, sublimation printers, and so forth. And pictures is a 10-needle embroidery machine. Now, don't worry. As you can see, the staff doesn't always try to fight you when you ask a question. We actually welcome them. This was just a one-off. So this is the media lab. In the media lab, we have pretty much high-end computers and 3D scanners and a VR headset. What we're trying to do is to help people make their design for 3D printing and so on and so forth. And we can even reverse engineer with that specific 3D scanner that we have, which is pretty handy. This is our machine shop, at least part of it. And in the machine shop, we have a lot of machine, including CNC routers, lasers, metal woodworking equipment, and even a water jet cutter. This is where you make bigger and stronger builds, basically, like furniture. This is our 3D printing room. We kind of went overboard on this one. We really have a little bit of everything from Fab Lab created printers that were created by the community to industry standard Stratasys F120s. Printing is open access to the open filament printers, but requires some approval from the staff for the expensive ones. And our secret is that the engineering department is trying to be really good at drones. So we have this really cool drone lab where we can make anything from the body to the software for the drones, and that's something we're going to try to become really good at in the future. So what have we done with all this? Well, first we had our grand opening this year. So we even had Linda McMahon, which is the former WWE exec, and also the Small Business Administration administrator. That was quite the exciting day, and we had like a few hundreds of people that came, and now hopefully people know that they can access the space in the community. And we also hosted the Science Olympiad, which is a STEM tournament, for those who don't know, with hundreds of students from all around the Northeast that competed with each other on STEM challenges. It was pretty intense. There was about 50 challenges, different challenges throughout the day. And we were very happy to host those amazing kids. It was pretty fun having them invade basically the rest of the building with crazy experiments and crazy looking things all over, which kind of worried a little bit of the neighbors, but it was pretty intense. And it was so tight that we didn't even have time to give the winner the trophies because everything was so tight. So we actually had to ship them the next day. Now, back to the obvious, we're a makerspace in a university, so basically we do classes, a lot of them. Everybody's welcome to use it, but we have a special relationship with engineering because that's where all of their classes take place. That's basically their home. Now, it's not just them, though. We've had fashion design, arts, biomedical, education, and plenty of others that use the space. We actually encourage inquiry-based learning rather than traditional methods, and we help with any technical need like the professor might have. So our student staff can actually become student assistants in the classroom if the professors needs help. And students have started taking ownership of the space, which we welcome, and even have created their own club for the activities there. We actually work with them to offer workshops. We can actually pay them, and that's going to be the same for the community when we can resume being a community, basically. We fully intend to participate in the Maker Faire Connecticut this year, but as you know, everybody's plans have to change this year. So I am on the board, and we're looking forward to next year, but that's a perfect transition to talk about a little bit of what we did for COVID, because we were impacted like everybody else, and we tried to help. So in partnership with a lot of other spaces, we got to print PPE equipment at first, like everybody else, and they were delivered by Hackerspace Danbury, which they were just amazing with this. And with MakeHaven and GR and Lior especially, we got to work on a ventilator design that is used as a last resort. Hopefully it won't be useful, but we're still working on them. Now, what else have we done? Well, we've done countless other projects that I don't have time to list here, but we're pretty proud of the robotics team that we've helped. Actually, kind of like Chris, we helped the First Robotics team, and they won second place, I believe. We've made anything from a button for the Christmas a tree to turn on, and a lot of other things. So basically, I hope that you have a better idea of what's happening at the Idea Lab. Now, we're not opening to the community in the fall because of you know what, but we're really hoping to open to everyone as soon as we possibly can. And you'll all be welcome to use the space. We'll have community hours and so on and so forth. Obviously, right now, I cannot give you any details because, well, COVID, but I hope I'll see you there one day.
Great. Well, thank you. And I'm looking forward to future collaborations.
Perfect. Yeah, I'm Corey Rice, and the first half of this presentation is going to be sort of an introduction to me because I just moved to New Haven, and then the second half is going to be about the foundations of fabrication, which is a new exciting offer that we're going to put together with JR and I. So when we get to that part, JR, if you want to chime in, feel free. But I moved here predominantly because my wife got a job at Yale, and so just thought it'd be nice to share a little picture of the family. Here we all are, about a year ago. So, you know, personal introductions. That's me, and then my wife is Carolyn. She's a fellow at Yale doing addiction medicine stuff. But about me, I am a teacher. First and foremost, that's what I do. And so here I'm working with some kids. I work with kids across all sorts of grade levels. The school that I was at had a fab lab, and so I was able to do interesting projects. In this case, students are using little Sphero robots to create a painting sort of like Jackson Pollock would have, or is kind of random. Other things I've done with students, once we built GPS modules where it could track your motion, and then we took them to Cedar Point, which in Ohio is an amusement park with lots of roller coasters. And you can see the yellow line there. It actually tracked out the geometry of the roller coaster as the student was riding it. So it would sample like 10 times a second. And here's some more things. I also play the other side of the Science Olympiad game that Cedric hosted. So I would coach students. And so here are a couple of projects. There's a ramp in the bottom right. There's a Mission Possible machine in the left. These are all student designed, student built things. So it's been a ton of fun to really work with kids for a long period of time. Here's some more. This year we had Sounds of Music, so we built an instrument. Sometimes we do things for homecoming with students, or we built some tables. There's a lot of different things that just come up in a school when you've got all these maker skills and things around that you just feel like you need to make sure that everybody can do the best they can. But about me, again, just the first half here, I took Fab Academy in 2017, which is a 6-month-long, real intensive course where you learn how to make almost anything, is the shtick that goes with the class. And it's fun, but it's way intense. It was like 40 hours a week on top of my teaching load. And so that took a lot of energy. But I got to build a lot of cool things. The last slide was a lot of circuits, and this is more sort of hands-on things. There's some molding and casting, composites, lasers, CNC, the top right there, I built from scratch with a couple other people a candle making robot. So it would dip the wick into hot wax, which is just kind of fun, a little pointless, but it really drilled down on that. I also like to build sort of in the more traditional way. So I had a house back in Ohio and I did a lot of renovations. So this sort of building was how I was raised. As a kid, we were just a family of do-it-yourselfers. And so I had this house that I was able to gut and flip, which was a ton of fun. And so here, this turned out kind of small, but it was a lot of fun to take a kitchen and really do the whole thing. And at the time, I wasn't married yet, so I was doing this all alone, which is a lot to do, except that giant concrete countertop weighed about 800 pounds. So I had to get a bunch of friends and beer and pizza to convince them all to come help me. But then there's maker projects also. So I've done magic mirrors. In the middle is a Ghostbusters backpack. And on the right, that is a light up jacket that has the high school's logo. So it would blink green because we're the Green Wildcats. And so it was fun to have that sort of thing to wear for ridiculous homecoming events and that sort of stuff. But my biggest personal project is that I made a robot bartender. And so this is the one slide about it, but it's got a whole database, custom circuit boards I ordered from China, soldered on brand new chips that TI invented in 2018, built the database out so that it works. But new half. MakeHaven is offering a Foundations of Fabrication course, and it's real exciting. Essentially, all the skills that you just saw me list, that's what we're going to try and teach you in this course. And it takes years to accumulate all those skills, but every piece of experience that I've got, whether it's my traditional training, whether it's the Pi Academy that I did with Eben Upton, who invented the things, or whether it's Fab Academy, all of that we're going to try and compact into one schedule so that you get exposure to all the different parts of a Fab Lab and how you integrate those skills in ways that you may not have thought about yet. But I've thought about it a lot. I've been teaching Fab Lab things to students in high school, and it's really our like best kids that you get in Science Olympiad. Cedric, I'm sure, can nod that those are all good kids that came through. And so I've been teaching Fab things at a high level, wondering about how to make this accessible to everybody. Because this, and a risk of just trying to do clarity here, this course is designed to bring learning about fabrication to everybody, to people who are not able to make the commitment of full-time school or quitting a job. When I took Fab Academy, it was a whole job on top of another job. It was 40 hours easily of whatever spare time I could muster. The MakeHaven Foundations of Fabrication course is going to be about hands-on learning, where you, if you wanted to join, our students will be working on new projects every 2 weeks. And we keep that going. We have a set schedule, and I'll be there to support you if you need it. But trying to build a breadth of experience. You're going to build a personal portfolio that's going to build over the 10 months that we do it. So if every 2 weeks, 40 weeks total, trying to get you through a whole lot of different experiences. Because what I found, and probably what many of you have found, is that when you learn a new process, all of a sudden you start to try and make new connections in your mind of how can I do this thing differently, or how can I do that differently now that I have this new skill. But all of that in mind, we're going to still try and target only 10 hours weekly for classes. Now, that's a target for like how long the assignments would take, or to watch the lectures, or sort of be engaged with the class. And that's a tight time limit, but we're going to try and make it work. So here is the contact info. JR is the lead facilitator, and he's really the one making this happen. I am the lucky instructor who gets to try and help put all this stuff together. The start date is September, and JR and I were talking a little bit about that, so he'll maybe chime in with an update and some contact info.
Yeah, well, thank you, Corey. I'm very happy that Corey moved and brought all this experience because it really opens up the possibility of doing such an activity. It is still in development, and we are going to be sensitive to COVID concerns. So we're sort of monitoring to see where we can do as much as we can online and connect that to our existing resources.
Hi, everybody. I'm coming from MakeHaven, and MakeHaven is a nonprofit arts incubator based in Dixwell, New Haven. It was started by Titus Kafar, Jason Price, and Jonathan Brand. And what we offer is a year-long studio fellowship and a year-long apprenticeship that goes along with the fellowship. And the idea is that we're bringing up artists and bringing up young people simultaneously, and these are all renderings of the building. We are open, following CDC guidelines with social distancing, wearing masks, and we provide lots of hand sanitizer. This is the theater in the basement. So there's also a performing arts space in conjunction to studio spaces and exhibition spaces. And I just wanted to give MakeHaven a quick shout out, and it's spelled NXTHVN. So basically MakeHaven without the vowels, and another rendering of it. And we're about 90% complete now. So feel free to come by Dixwell. And I'm going to transition to my studio work in a second. And now, okay, I don't know why this is so blurry, but this is part of my sculptural process. I work in installation, sculpture, video, and performance. This body of work is called Now You See Me, Now You Don't. And this is a series of kinetic sculptures where I made these cast reproductions of my body, and I install them on these kinetic grid-like structures. And so essentially, if you go to my website, jeffreymaris.com, I'll drop it in the chat. You can see these operating in space and time. And the idea is that these bodies sort of contain the violence that we project onto people when we see them in public. So I wanted to literally sort of help the body escape the entanglement of racial interpolation and racialization. Let's see about this. Let's see next image. This piece is titled "The Block Is Hot." So there's 7 kinetic sculptures and 1 monument in this body of work. This one is called "On My Knees," and this references Colin Kaepernick taking a knee during the 2016 NFL games, and since he's yet to be rehired. And so I really was thinking about what would a monument look like today that would reflect values that are more equitable. This piece is called Pied à Terre. I was born in Haiti, I speak Haitian Creole. In that language, Pied à Terre literally means feet on the ground. So it was quite surprising to see in New York that a pied à terre refers to luxury or some sort of real estate. And what I've since started doing with this body of work is I started making drawings using the plaster dust that falls from the ground, and started making these drawings. So this is literally plaster dust on roofing paper. And there's 23 of these drawings that I've made so far. And that references the R62 subway train in New York. So this really specific thing happened where I got a ticket on the subway in New York. And that's what sort of inspired the Now You See Me, Now You Don't body of work. I was just thinking about like the ways in which the body is seen versus what it actually is. So thinking about hypervisibility, but also invisibility. And so I've started making these sort of almost automatic drawings using that dust, roofing paper, and double-sided tape. And this is some of my most recent studio work with some of the loudest stuff that you'll see. And these things are very automatic, so they sort of happen just as they are on the floor. So very, very interested in ideas around cartography, around abstraction, around play, also thinking about painting and photography. And this piece is titled Black Hole. This comes from the architecture of MakeHaven. So before it was an artist space, MakeHaven was, one side of it was a factory, a glass making facility, and the next side was an ice cream shop. So I'm also interested in repurposing items, and you know, this is still a work in progress. This piece is called Tit for Tat. I made this right after I came back from Ghana in 2018. So again, like this very cerebral feeling. So thinking about the body, but also thinking about like palm trees, and also thinking about like genetic information and how I can make familiar materials seem abstracted. This is a detail of it. And really closely, there's like this one strand of fiber that comes from a Ghana must go bag, what we know as the Chinese laundry bags or tote bags. And that sort of like has really particular sort of cultural nuance in Ghana that I won't be able to get to right now. And this piece is called Just in Time. So essentially all of the sculptures that I made that I showed you guys earlier had rusted over time. And what I did was I cleaned them off with acetic acid and terry rags. And so what you're looking at is just like an accumulation of rust. And I sort of like pinned them together and then used snaps and grommets to sort of put them together and then stretched it over a wooden frame that I made. And so this is like one like active body of work that I have going on in the studio, because it almost becomes leather, but also thinking about both the macro and the micro, because like what we associate with the taste and smell of blood is actually the taste and smell of iron. So going back to my roots and my practice more or less. And this last piece is called Out of Breath. This is also an ongoing project, and this is a kinetic sculpture as well. So essentially what's happening is this motor pushes down on the bellow and it causes the two bottles to inflate and deflate.
Great. Well, thank you. And I'm going to do a presentation on something we have going on here at in development at MakeHaven. So as we're thinking about makerspaces, we live in this broader community of interrelated ideas, the hacker movement, the maker movement, entrepreneurship, citizen science. And then there's this other one, DIY bio and biohacking. These might seem scary or outlandish to some folks that are less familiar, but they really are kindred spirits to the maker movement, and part of it, because it's about bringing tools and technologies to the community in order that you have new capabilities and understanding. And there's been some evolving information about what these labs can be, an incredible drop in price in what they cost. There's also there's lots of information out there. I happen to like this YouTube channel, The Thought Emporium, and you can see the sorts of interesting things that they get to do with working with like mushrooms or electrophoresis, which is where you break up DNA and you look at the different segments and how many of them there are. And a lot of these types of activities are happening at these bio labs that have appeared a lot of times in big cities, but also included inside the maker spaces at universities and inside maker spaces otherwise. In fact, at the Nation of Makers, the national association, the keynote was really about calling spaces to get involved in this movement. And they work well together. So here's a lot of biological equipment. This is biological equipment cut on laser cutters, made in maker spaces. And so you can help each other by using the maker space to make the biological equipment. And then just think with MakeHaven be so full featured, what we can do with a water jet and all the other equipment we have. Part of my research was to go to Boz Lab. This is in Boston. It's a relatively small space. It's a small community nonprofit, and they do events and activities teaching people the fundamental citizen science and things about biology. They also do their own experiments. Taking it further, I went to the Community Bio Summit. This was again in Boston. And these are people from all around the world who are educators and are makers related to biology. And they come together to share the types of projects that they're working on, as well as share best practices and try and address some of the broader concerns that come up when you talk about biology. This is, for example, one of the sort of products of their work. They're talking about how they want to democratize it, how they want to bring life sciences to people, to create a global network that improves life and inspires creativity. And then when you go to the session and you see all the types of things they created. So the animation there is someone who made a glow stick using only biological materials rather than chemicals. So these are just glowing bacteria. There's petri dishes with art in them. There's mushroom that make different materials. And I think biomaterials is one of the really exciting areas. So this is me going through various samples. These are made typically with fungi or with plant matter and then dried out, but they make materials that can be applied in all sorts of different ways. And at the top of them, you see the various recipes that are being shared. One of the ways is in fashion. This is an area of creativity where new materials can be integrated. The Bio Fashion Tech show was actually in Connecticut a year or two ago, and they had all sorts of things growing on them. And then here's some other examples of very refined pieces. I'm a bit of a microphile, a person who likes mushrooms and nature. This is a material I enjoyed. It's like foam, but it's these wood chips that has been inoculated with mushroom spores, and it grows the white tendrils. It's like the roots of the mushroom. And so you can grow that into a mold. You see a bicycle helmet there to make things. And when I was at the conference, they did different sessions, the types of sessions you would bring to educate people in spaces. This was one where they had bacteria of different colors, and you draw into a petri dish. You don't see anything at the time. You're drawing blind at first. But then you incubate it overnight, and it grows into those shapes. The most exciting thing we did is, you might have heard of CRISPR. We actually used CRISPR to break up a chain of DNA, and then we ran it through a process where the bigger chains and the smaller chains were separated, and that's that fingerprint you see in the middle of the screen. And this would be unique to any DNA that would be out there. So you could identify specific species and do other things. There's also collaborative projects happening. There's an open insulin project, which is looking to make less expensive insulin through simpler processes. There's also cool things like work around kombucha, and they're doing like a family tree where they genetically characterize the kombucha and how it moved and has been passed on from person to person. And of course, there are lots of conversations about the ethical concerns. These are some ideas. And these are being done all in what is called biosafety level 1, which means that it can be done in open air. It doesn't need to be separated from the air system, but you do put it in a little separate lab. These are non-pathogenic type of things. And so we're planning to put one in the what is now conference room. We'll be replacing a new conference room. But this can support and be related to the communal space where we can do activities. We can bring people in to do the biological work. And we have a rich wealth of knowledge with the different universities around here. We have a grant in the finalization process, so it's pretty sure, but I'm waiting. And we'll be able to get all the fundamental equipment to get a basic biolab where it can do most of these experiments and educational activities in the near future. In the next few months, we'll at least have the foundations of this started. This is a rendering I did of how this little community lab will look like. And of course, as we're doing different experiments that don't need to be in the lab, we actually expand out into the main space. And where it goes next is education. So we look to what other spaces are doing. There's a whole bunch of education, but there's also how to grow almost anything, which is done by the fellow who hosted the workshops. And we're a fabrication lab, and they do a bio academy, a sister to the fabrication academy that Corey talked about. So lots to learn and lots to do, lots that I'm excited about sharing in the near future.
Once upon a time, there was a woman with a dog, a beautiful, loyal, friendly dog. And one day she let her dog out into the backyard, but the gate was open. And of course the dog wandered out. And even though she looked and looked and looked for him all over the neighborhood, she never found him. Once upon a time, there was a school at a busy intersection in a busy neighborhood. And the parents of the kids who went to the school worried that all the pollution from all the cars and trucks would make their kids sick, but they had no way to tell whether the air was actually polluted or whether they just worried too much. Once upon a time, there was a medicine that had to be kept cold all the time at the factory and on the truck and at the hospital, because if it got warm, it would go bad and not work. But the doctors, when they gave it to the sick people, had no way to know whether it had gotten warm and would not work. Once upon a time, there was a tracker you could put on a dog, and an air quality monitor you could put near a school, and a thermometer you could put on a vial of medicine. But there was no way to send that location or that carbon monoxide level or that temperature to the people who needed to know them. Now, as you all know, there was a way, a very good way, to send just about anything you wanted, like pictures and videos and recordings of people telling stories, to anybody, anywhere. But to use this way, you had to pay lots of money, and you had to worry about charging your battery all the time. So once upon a time, someone figured out a way, a brilliant way, to send tiny amounts of data a long, long distance using hardly any energy at all, so that it wouldn't cost a lot and a battery would last a long, long time. And he called this way LoRa, for long range. And then, once upon a time, things got a little stuck because nobody wanted to build the LoRa network until things like trackers and air quality monitors and thermometers were made that could use a LoRa network. And nobody wanted to make things to use a LoRa network until the LoRa network was already there. And then, once upon a time, a company said, hey, why don't we make it so anybody, anywhere in the world can help build and run a LoRa network? And why don't we pay them for helping run it and pay them with a magical kind of money called cryptocurrency? And so that company named themselves Helium, and they made a machine that was kind of like your Wi-Fi router, but it could hear from those LoRa things like trackers and air quality monitors and thermometers, even when they were far, far away. And once upon a time, there was a beautiful city filled with wonderful people who wanted to find their lost dogs and know their children were breathing clean air and know their medicine would work when the doctor gave it to them. So they needed to buy those machines from Helium and build a LoRa network. And these people had to do it together because those machines didn't work as well or get as much magical money for their owners when they were alone and all by themselves. No, they needed other machines around them so they could talk to each other and check in on each other to make sure they were working okay. And once upon a time in the beautiful city, there was a very special place run by amazing people where you could go to learn how to make just about anything you wanted. And those amazing people in that very special place decided to bring together the people in the beautiful city to build the network. And so once upon a time, they brought the people in the beautiful city together and told them about the Helium machines and how they worked and how they were safe and how they made the magical money and how the people could work together to build the LoRa network to make their beautiful city better. And then once upon a time, the people from the very special place talked to the people who made the Helium machines and convinced them to sell the machines to the people in the beautiful city for less than they sell them to people in other cities, but only the first 15 people. And then once upon a time, the people from the very special place looked up some information and made some guesses. And if their guesses were right, which they very well might not be, the Helium machines would make enough magical money to pay for themselves in about 6 months. So, if you're one of the wonderful people who live in the beautiful city and you would like one of the Helium machines so that all the wonderful people in the beautiful city can do things like find their lost dogs, and so you can get some of the magical money, this is where you can do it.
There's also a button on the homepage of MakeHaven temporarily while we're trying to recruit some hotspot locations. Thank you, John. Well, and I think this is our capstone, Michael Angelis. Michael, are you?
I'm here.
You are here. Ready to go?
I'm ready.
I will start.
Okay, so this is kind of just a overview of artwork I've made since I moved to New Haven, which was in 2007. I didn't have a studio and I didn't really know what to focus on, but the highways in New Haven sort of drew me to them. So I started painting on site outside. So these are the early paintings. I bought a French easel and I would go set up under a highway and paint for a day or two. And encountered a lot of interesting conversations. People were very curious as to what I was exactly painting. it was the highways, the overpasses, especially when you're underneath them. There's sort of this like sort of this non-zone. It's like sort of invisible space, unused space. There are these sort of connections between neighborhoods, but they really divide up the city. And so by painting them, I would often sort of activate those spaces or those areas where people would, become curious and stop and talk. And so the art became sort of a conduit to sort of me getting to know the city and trying to understand, kind of who is around, like who is in these neighborhoods, things like that. This one is actually from Brooklyn, not from New Haven, but same thing where I was painting this old Citroen dealership, and everyone in Gowanus would stop to look at it, and normally just walk right by it. It was something that they would just walk by on a daily basis. I got that comment from several people. I finally got a studio, and it was on the corner of Church and Crown, and it was above the old Macy's site. And so I watched them. I made a painting of them demolishing the Macy's, and then this one of building Gateway College. So I spent several months watching this construction and then documenting it. I got interested in the 95-91 reconstruction project, which just happened to be happening, and I was doing these highway paintings. So I started documenting those. So this is early, like 2011 maybe. You can see the old highway structure, and they're building the new one. That thing's called a diesel hammer. I found that out from a construction worker. Then I started working larger. So I would take photos of sites that I really liked, and then I would work them up into large scale paintings. So I wasn't painting on site as much, and I started really trying to grasp the scope of and the scale of the project. They seemed like they demanded larger pieces as the project went on. This one is the flyover from 95 to downtown. This is the painting where I swore I would never paint dirt ever again. But it was a really amazing structure, and all these like ruins with the new highway structure above it. This slide's a little green, but this is the Stony Creek Quarry, so a little bit of a deviation from the highway stuff. This was a really fascinating piece to do. Just the scale of that place was really overwhelming and amazing. Back to the highway stuff, I started doing these kind of like overlays of the old highway with some of what was existing or what was to become, kind of like a multi-frame, multiple exposure photograph. And then after the highway project finished, I sort of, the momentum, I sort of lost the momentum. This one, I never showed this piece, so I thought I'd put in here. This piece was over 4 studios and 6 years of painting the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band cover. It started as just practice painting faces, and it sort of morphed into this mutant project where I started including members of their family and people from their actual life off to the right in black and white, and then the Sgt. Pepper's, like the stage for the characters, became the colored sort of centerpiece. And then it turned into sort of a self-portrait where I included myself in the painting. So 6 years, 4 studios, countless hours of work, and I made a self-portrait where I'm not even facing the viewer and I'm very tiny. But it was a really fun project to do, and I think in terms of the amount of hours spent on actually working with the medium, it really was a huge bump in my technical ability. 20 seconds. The 20-second thing is hard. All right, then I gave up oil painting for a while because it was taking too long. So I started doing artwork of things that you use very quickly. So these are disposable condiments and like throwaway coffee cups. So I started doing some prints. The right one was made at MakeHaven, actually almost entirely at MakeHaven. These are watercolors. So I became sort of fascinated with these items that we use for 3 seconds and then just discard, and then spend time actually looking at them and observing them and making these paintings, even though these are a little bit faster than, say, an oil painting might be. The takeout bag, the sort of ubiquitous takeout bag with the smiley face on it that comes in different colors now, I found out. I ate a lot of takeout in the 3 years that I made this. So much sodium, you cannot believe how thirsty I was. And then this is the last one of these that I ever did. This I did very recently, where I just really liked the form of these hot sauce bottles, and started playing a little bit with the perspective and kind of distorting them a bit in terms of the perspective. So this is sort of a new chapter of that food item. And now I'm back to doing oil paintings again. I'm doing dogs with jobs. So if you, I'm doing these on commission. If you're interested, I'll put my contact info in the chat. If you want your pet, I do cats too, or birds or whatever, snakes, but they have to have a job. Thanks.
I was very happy and excited to see all that you've done. Hopefully we'll do another one of these and learn about even more makers and their cool projects.
Awesome. Thanks, JR.
Thanks for putting it together.
So much,
Thanks.
have a great evening, everyone.
Mhm.
Yeah.